Okay. Okay, don't know if anyone can hear me. There's a couple people filtering in, but you know, I'm just gonna play with stuff. Um, what do I got here is I got the setup I put together. The Arturia is acting as my controller, obviously. I've got the SH-4D, which I'm playing from the keyboard, and the Torso S4, which has a loop on. The rest of this stuff is just kind of to fill out the frame. The Waldorf was in the last streams. That's just kind of where it lives, and the LXR is how I got the drum loop. I'm just going to play around with some sound here for a little bit, and then go playing with the rhythm unit. So the rhythm section on the SH-4D, which is, I know what a lot of people seem to not understand how cool that is, and we'll get to that later. Where I am sitting is unfortunate because I will tell you I cannot see the screen of my computer to monitor the chat, so I will check in with it periodically once I get things kind of playing here, but here we go. Okay, let's see why everything's so quiet. Why is the music so quiet? That doesn't make sense because it's quite loud to me. Let's see. Put that up. Test 1, 2. Okay, OBS says it's very loud. Okay, let's see what's going on, because hear me now? Problem seems to be that the torso is quiet, and I was kind of mixing to that, and I can't get enough gain on it. I've got, I've in my mixer, my Studio Live, it's showing I'm already adding like 10 decibels of gain to the torso, and I've got its fader maxed. This is an interesting piece. I'm gonna. why I'm not just saying this and typing it. But yeah, that was the main part of this. Was the synth sound was the SH-4D, and I'm using the new organ model that was added in the 2.0 operating system. I'm really liking the organ model a lot. Obviously not using it for organs at all, but more as like an additive oscillator. The only thing that's a shame with it is it only has 4 frequency bands. I would love to see Roland make an 8-band version of this. A long time ago, I had a Arturia Origin synthesizer, and that had an drawbar organ module, and I used to make the greatest additive sounds by putting 2 or 3 of those and then putting them a few octaves apart to get these very dense packs of harmonics going. Unfortunately, you can't modulate any of the drawbars, and even if you could, the SH-4D only has 1 LFO you can work with. So performance, and that's one of the nice things with the drawbar organ module. You have you probably can't see it on the screen the way this is set up, but the sliders act as the drawbars, and these 2 buttons let you change the tuning of the lowest and the highest drawbar. So you can get pretty interesting with that, and that's of course going into the analog filter, which doesn't get nearly enough love. It's a really good filter they put on this thing, and somehow there's enough of them for every voice to have their own, be polyphonic, and then also each one of the drum voices, which we'll talk about in a little bit, each of these has their own filter settings too. Now, they don't have LFOs, which is unfortunate, but their drum sounds, the idea is you're probably not going to need an LFO. Again, unfortunate, but compromises were made. The SH-4D either works for you or it doesn't, because it's basically a lot of very odd choices and compromises. I think Roland literally has 1 guy working on this, and this has been his passion project, and no one is helping him, and that's why it took so long to get a 2.0 operating system out of it, because it is just a weird product. Somewhat incomplete. The 1.0 was definitely a beta, but this 2.0 fixed some things very well, and I really am enjoying it. The torso, I am still learning this thing. I had it on last week, and I was doing work with it. I figured out sampling. I love being able to sample and loop on it because it actually samples, like if it's got MIDI clock, it will sample the loop, and the loop will automatically start playing in time with whatever was coming in, and it's all automatically aligned to the bar beat clock. And really useful. That's the upside. The downside is I don't have the 2.0 operating system that's still in beta, and I've heard that the 2.0 is still very buggy, so that 2 weeks they said at Superbooth was really optimistic. The 1.2 version on here is still buggy as hell. This thing has memory leaks in its operating system where if you leave it on for too long, it just starts to act crazy. And not even rebooting will get it to stop acting crazy. You have to actually pull the power, let it completely clear itself out, and then come back. And that has been frustrating with it. That said, when it's working, it's amazing. It's, I think I'm going to call it Bruce, because that's like the shark on Jaws. The robot shark was called Bruce, and it never worked, except when it was working, it was wonderful. So that's kind of the torso. In a nutshell. Really good. I was a little afraid when I first got it, based on a lot of these granular devices, that granular in general tends to sound all the same. You end up getting very similar results every time you use it. And it kind of becomes a one-trick pony, at least in the way that I've worked with it. I haven't dug too deep into it, and maybe I'm just missing something or haven't hit my stride with it. But as I'm playing with the torso, I've usually been only running with 1 loop and just trying to get used to it and playing with the different effects to get to know them. but I can really see how you could have the entire background to a live set coming out of this thing. I'm only using one track now. You could have like a loop track for just like your bass line and some other things. You could use it like Heinbach I think it was Heinbach did a video not too long ago about techniques using a 4-track tape recorder, where you just have 4 tracks and then you fade between them to get changes in the song. And you could really do that with this. It would be nicer if it had faders rather than knobs for that. But there's things coming in with the performance mode that I've seen demos for the scene, because right now when you click scene you get coming soon, and you hit performance you get coming soon, and you hit temp you get coming soon, which is just about the worst thing they can do. This was, I get what Torso is doing here, but my God, they should have just been open. That they shouldn't have called it a 1.0. They should have called it a 0.5 and been, people were buying into a beta program, because that's what it is. This thing, when I first received it, it was only on the 1.0 operating system, and that was so buggy, and so many things were just coming soon that it was virtually unusable. And little tip, as someone that's been a software developer for a long time, don't show a feature that clicks coming soon and don't not give it to people very soon. You will get very angry people in your Discord very quickly. I've been holding back, but it's an absolutely lovely synth otherwise. The UI is wonderful. I've been able to get through it mostly without the 150-page manual. Yes, 150-page manual for this thing. I've been able to get through without it so much. The SH-4D, on the other hand, has... This one I wish had a shorter, more concise manual, and the Roland, I wish it had any kind of manual that was coherent at all, because that's Roland, and their manuals are the worst. I don't advocate them getting ChatGPT to write their manuals for them, but it would be an improvement. Who's ever writing them now, I think it's like, again, it's that one guy at Roland who's the only guy that has anything to do with this, and he wrote the manual as quickly as possible, and then he probably helped write the SP404 manual too, because they're both about as useless. I don't know. That's maybe a little harsh, but that's how I feel. Tell me how you really feel. So anyway, let me get back to the chat and see what people are griping about. Peter, the difference between the EOS manual and the 150-page Torso manual is, I will tell you that the EOS manual made sense, and when I read it, I learned new things. Because the EOS manual, I would actually recommend anybody who wants to understand sampling, go find an old EMU sampler and an old EMU manual for that sampler, because they don't just teach you how to use the gear, they teach you the fundamentals of how sampling works. The same goes for Ensoniq. Ensoniq manuals were amazingly well written and very informative. So I really recommend anybody who wants to know more get into that. Thank you, Abbott. I appreciate the thumbs up on that. EOS emulator operating system. That is, I have my tribute to EMU sitting next to me here with my E4 XT Ultra and ESI 2000 or 4000. I can't remember the number of it. And ESA 4000, and then 2 EMU Romplers and a EMU Morpheus sitting here. They're amazing instruments, and at some point I'll do an FAFO on the E4 XT. I've thought about like how it might be interesting for people to see how we recorded before we had a DAW. What some of us were doing in the late 90s when we got samplers, because that it's kind of interesting, because basically that was the DAW, that was the Ableton workflow. What you would do is you would just multi-sample all your synths. Maybe you only had 1 or 2 synths, and the way you made that into a wall of synths is you recorded many loops on them, and then you sequenced the loops and then mixed them with something like a Yamaha Pro Mix mixer that you could automate via MIDI for mutes and automation. And it was basically what you do in Ableton now, but very physical and much more focused because you had less options. You couldn't do whatever you wanted. The PK6 was not a bad device. That's actually it was in the ending days of EMU because it was one of the P2000s. It was one of the Proteus 2000s, but in a cheap keyboard. They just found another way to sell those ROMs to you, and the ROMs are really amazing. But I've acquired all of the ROMs and all of the WAV files for those ROMs, and I will leave it as an exercise for the listener on how you can acquire those yourselves via totally legal and non-copyright infringing means through archive.org. But they're out there, and I'm actually going to do an FAFO at some point with the MPC, where I want to get some of those ROMs, get some of those files, those SFCs, those sound fonts, and load them in to the new sample, the new key map programs on the Akai, because everyone thinks you have to use the plugins to get like Rompler-like sounds on the Akai, and that is, one, completely false, and two, those plugins are actually terrible for your memory management on those things. They make your projects take forever to load, and while they sound nice, I honestly think you can do better if you take 5 minutes and learn how to tweak a filter. That, Peter, is exactly how I used to do my stage shows. The first one, I was in my band, one of my first bands, Carbon Haze, way back in the day. I had a rack mount EMU E64 with 10 megabytes of RAM, which was not enough to stuff a whole live set into it. And then I had, I think it was a General Music keyboard. It was either a General Music S2 keyboard or a Yamaha SY85. I can't remember which one I took on stage, but every song we had it set up so that I sent one program change from it, and it loaded our samplers, switched the drum machine program for our drummer, who was all electronic, and did something for the keyboard. I think I just was providing clock to our vocalists, who had one keyboard. I don't know if he's around. He might join the stream. But we gave him, he was able to bring, he was a keyboard player too, and he brought a Korg Prophecy on stage because, he got to sing, so we only let him have one note. That was kind of the joke. That it worked out well. But yeah, that Magic preset change was amazing. And after that, I got a little bit more money because I had a good job, and I got a Kurzweil K2000. And I was able to get the full 64 megabytes of RAM for that. Yes, megabytes, kids, megabytes, not gigabytes. And I was able to transfer all of the samples from the K2000 from the EMU E64 to the K2000 using MIDI sample dump, which took me close to a month. I think it took a long time because I could do a demonstration of doing sample dumps, but it was basically hook the MIDI between the samplers, pick the sampler, press a button, and then go off and wait for an hour while that short little sample got transmitted. And did not transfer loop points. You had to manually, retype those loop points in when you got it on the other machine. You had to manually key map it. You didn't have things like chicken systems back then. It was all a very manual process and a lost art. Data disk SQ. I remember those. Then at some point I was able to scrounge the money. I think it was my work was throwing out some old machines, and I was able to scavenge a SCSI card. And then I was able to use SCSI to transfer samples to a PC from each sampler, and then what took weeks before could be done in seconds. Because it was just so much easier to transfer samples. But again, you lost your loop points, you lost your key mappings, and you had to redo that. The interesting thing is I actually have those banks. I actually found them recently. I found a bunch of zip disks, and I have all those old sample banks, and I could load them up and play with them again. It's kind of funny to see where your head was at like a full more than 20 years ago with your technology when you find these old sample sets, because I found like all these samples from old movies and stuff like that where, it's just weird. I was like, what was I watching on TV? What was I doing? How did I have this much time to collect this much garbage? Because I definitely don't have that time now. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here now. And I have to figure out a way to get the YouTube chat on my phone or something so that it can be next to me at the on the desk. Let me see if I can do that. I have no way. I wish there was a way to just get the chat part of this without actually joining the stream. Anyway, here we go. Let's play with this a little bit. We're going to stop this. So, in typical Roland fashion, the way you get around the SH-4D is just shy of insane. It really is. It's just shy of insane. Everything uses a shift button. Like the shift button is given prominent space on the front panel because you will need to use it that much. I think of it like the way I don't know if you're any Windows users here, but I use it at work, and the Windows button has been on keyboards for years and never had any purpose whatsoever. And then with like Windows 8, I think the guy who invented it got his revenge because now you need to use the Windows button for freaking everything. They just changed all the key maps. Except for copy and paste, everything else seems to now involve using the Windows button. Well, Roland, this shift button, there's a guy at Roland who thinks the shift button should be part of every function. So, get to know it. This button, the shift button will be the first button on this unit to die. I am sure of it. But here I'm now in the rhythm section. And they are velocity sensitive. They have velocity programmed into them. The buttons on the unit are not velocity sensitive, so they're just like that. But if you program the sequencer, you can get some really nice dynamics out of them. The interesting thing is the voices on the drums are very interesting because you actually have two oscillators. They aren't really oscillators; they're really samples. But each of these samples has their own pitch envelopes. They have their own structure, and then they can cross-modulate each other. You can do FXM on them so that they can interact with each other, and they all sound really nice. Like, and they have their own each voice has their filter. Like, you can hear I'm changing the filter on this one, but it's not affecting anything else. You can also change the type of filter. Like that's the low pass, or excuse me, high pass filter. High pass or low pass, and then the and it's got resonance on there too. To give you a little bit. Oh yeah, you don't have an LFO on there, but what's that's nice. Nice little white noise thing there on there. Let me see if I can find, and there's just a lot. There's also a lot of kits and a lot of nice kits in here. Oh, those are the user rhythm kits. I haven't really done too much with them yet, but I think they put enough reverb on that one. Oh, and that's another thing. All the drums have separate sends to the effects, so you can have like a dry kick, but then obviously a very wet snare. I guess we really need that much reverb. I mean, I think Enya needs that much reverb, but not me. Ooh. Everybody call Covenant if you know that band. Jesus, that's a lot of reverb. I gotta turn that down. I am not a drummer, you may have noticed. I could go off on that comment, Peter. I think what it is that everybody is moving toward their life being a tailored experience. And there is no longer the common experience. And I think part of that is because in some ways our society has made every town and every city exactly alike, because if you want coffee, you go to Starbucks or you go to Dunkin', and everybody has those same consistent experiences. So in their personal lives, they want to customize everything to their whim. The downside to that, of course, is that everybody sitting in their home studios is basically a genre of one creator and one listener making music for themselves that only they can listen to, and their own personal DJ. And the algorithms have no incentive to challenge you at any time because they want you to keep listening. The algorithm cannot have an empty dance floor. It wants you to keep consuming, so it will only feed you what it knows you like. It's not like the old days in the record store. There is no chance of going in and just buying something because you thought the cover looked cool. You get home and your mind is blown away because it's not something you expected to hear. People are almost afraid of being challenged these days. They don't want anything new. They want what's comfortable. And this is why AI music is great for them, because AI music will never create anything new. It will only create what was here before on the whim of whoever's entering the prompt. Okay, there, I said it. Now I'm going to get, you know, blacklisted by the tech bros, and I literally could not give any fewer fucks. No such thing as too much reverb. Enya definitely doesn't think so. I mean, she's got more reverb than God's bathroom. I don't know where she gets that, but anyway, yeah. Okay. Okay, turn up the reverb because that seems like what everyone wants. And the reverb on this is actually pretty good. Roland makes stuff that sounds amazing. It's just its whole UI concept is stuck in about 2005. If they could ever get their user interface and user experience shit together, they would be amazing. Someone get a freebie on here. He'll be completely offended at my wonderful finger drumming. I'm a keyboard player, not a finger drummer. I will never be a drummer, though that's what I wanted to be originally. I got into keyboards because at the time, keyboards you could have a headphone set on, and my parents were very adamant, no drums, because they were too loud. So I bought drum machines and synthesizers instead. Oh, I like that one. They have a lot of these wonderful sounds that are just like white noisy. You could make an excellent Kraftwerk kit on this box, which is something I think I need to do. Just make a little kit called Boom Chick. Maximize the reverb on that cowbell. There, the reverb's off now. Let's see, where's the, what can you... Hello, 80s. Oh, the shimmer verb. For now, we'll just go dry. Keep hitting the wrong knob, guy. I always want to hit the model knob instead of the data knob under the display to change sounds, and it gets me in a lot of trouble. That's their 908 kit. They call this Euro modular kit, which I find entertaining because I have a Euro modular back there, and this, yeah, this does kind of sound like the crappy drums you get out of that if you're not halfway understanding how it works. At some point I gotta just turn these all into the preset kits into an MPC pack for myself. Ooh. That's a nice one. Little 707 kit. Gotta have that cowbell. There we go. Everyone's got that guy in the neighborhood. I don't know what that sound is, but I like it. I'm going to save that. I just want to save the pattern. That's nice. Okay. Preferred reverb units. I don't really know. I have an Alesis Wedge that I really like. I also have a Fractal Audio Axifx 3 that I also really like, that I don't use enough. But I usually do reverb in the box. I really like the Valhalla reverbs. One of my favorite reverbs is actually in Reason. It's that reverb machine that they added that's supposed to be a lexicon. Oh, and I have a lexicon, what is it? It's one of their crappiest reverbs, or crappiest units, like an MX400. I have that in the rack, and I really like using that. As I don't get into the hardcore tweaking of reverbs and such like that as much as I maybe should, but that's partially because, as some of you know, I'm deaf on one side, and being a half-deaf musician means that I don't get the same kick out of the spatialization that everybody else does. People may notice that when I do use reverb, I tend to either overuse it or way underuse it. I have a lot of difficulty with spatial effects because I don't hear them. I don't perceive them the same way as you do. And of course, I chose to work in a genre where reverb and spatialization is almost required because, of course, these are my life choices. Yeah, the RV7000. That's the reverb. When they introduced the Reason rack, I sneak that into a lot of things. It's just really, really, it's better than it should be. And also, like I said, I don't like getting into the fine detail tweaking, and it's got so many presets that are just, put that on a send and pick an algorithm that you like and just go. Don't worry about all the fine little details, the hundreds of parameters. I think there are people out there that like to think they can actually hear the difference in these things, but I mean, I'm 51 years old. My ears can't. My one good ear can't hear shit anymore. I mean, let's be honest. Who am I making music for? My dog. Bats that we have in the neighborhood flying around. Let's get some 96 kilohertz audio. We don't want to leave the bats out of it. I think a lot of our music stuff, I mean, we want things to sound warm and analog, but the part of the way you get that warm and analog sound is by not having it be too fizzy in the high end where none of us can hear anyway. So I don't know. I don't see the point to high extreme sample rates. Yeah, I've been falling back in love with Logic lately. Low key, I've been playing with it. I got it on my new Mac, and I don't know. I started on Logic, and I feel like I'm going home in a lot of ways. The only reason I switched away from Logic way back when was because Apple stopped support for Windows PCs when they bought it, and I did not have the money to buy a Macintosh at that time. But now I do have a Macintosh, and now I'm quite pleased with it. So let's take a look at the time. It's getting close to 5. Got some time to keep chatting here. Exactly. That's the whole thing. We if there's one thing that is true is that people will always, the emperor's new clothes kind of defines our society in a lot of ways. Not to get over philosophical on this, but, advertising has you'll have someone who says, this is how it works. You get someone who spends a lot, who has some expensive speakers, and you get some guy that says, hey, if you put these rocks on those speakers, they'll sound better, but I'm only going to sell you these rocks if you pay me $15,000 for them. And most people will say, no way, they're not going to buy the rocks. But then one guy is always dumb enough with enough money to pay $15,000 for the rocks. And now because he spent that much on the rocks, you will not convince him that they don't work, because he would have to admit that he'd been taken for a ride. And people don't want to do that. People don't want to admit they've been bamboozled. And I'm paraphrasing Carl Sagan here on all this. People don't want to admit it. They can't admit it. It would be too damaging to their own psyche to admit that they've been taken for a ride. But then what happens is other people start to come to his defense. Hey, because they want to be special, like they have special, unique knowledge. And they come out and say, yeah, I hear the difference too. I'm going to buy some of those rocks. And then sooner or later, you have a whole bunch of idiots paying $15,000 for rocks, and the only person who's making any money on it is the asshole that found the rocks, made the shiny rocks. You see it all the time. We see it all the time in music and music production. And we live in a time where there is no money to be made in being a creative, but there's a ton of money to be made in selling you products and services that make you think they're going to turn you into a rock star. That's just the way it is. So enjoy your rocks. Whatever gets your rocks off or rocks on. Whatever. Apple having to fix anything or having to do anything goes contrary. I'm a kind of a fanboy now, but I still realize that I've basically chosen. You have to choose who's going to be your master these days. Are you going to pledge fealty to this Lord over here, Lord Microsoft, or are you going to pledge fealty to Lord Cook and worship at the altar of Jobs? And I've made my choice with the Apple stuff. I just gave up. More or less, they beat me down because, I could go Linux, but no. And I'll be honest, the eMagic on the PC did have its problems. It did not like my my Motu PCI audio interface. I never was able to get that working right. Nowadays, it's so much easier. It's easier. You just plug things in and they tend to work unless you really do something boneheaded. But I remember the days of, plugging in a PCI card and spending 4 days arguing with IRQs before everything worked again and was stable, and then your pitiful excuse for a hard drive would fail. And was I doing backups? No, I wasn't doing backups. I was futzing with IRQs for 4 days. So, yeah, there we go. I do have a copy of eMagic 5.5 on CD-ROM somewhere around here, and I actually have the dongle. I still have the COM port dongle that you had to put on there so that it would run. I have that somewhere, and there's going to be some retro computing channel out there that I'll send it to at some point. Yeah. RME was always pretty awesome. I've never owned an RME. I've always kind of wanted to, but RME has the distinction. That's like, you can tell who's making the pro level gear because you never hear people talking about it on the internet. The low end stuff that's made for all the plebes, people are always arguing about that stuff on the internet because it's the stuff they can afford. But you never hear anything about Maddie because you never hear anything about RME because RME is made for professionals, used by professionals, and they just buy it, use it, and get on with their day. And they don't have time to, professionals don't have time to go bitching on the internet unless they're also running a YouTube channel, in which case then they only bitch on the internet. I'm an amateur, so I bitch on the internet. I'm a professional at bitching on the internet. I'm just an unpaid professional at bitching on the internet. I have a USB iLock for a copy of Cubase that somebody comped me way back when, and I actually really liked Cubase, and I don't know why I stopped using it. I think Ableton got good, and I started playing with Ableton, and I ended up in the Ableton camp for a long way, though begrudgingly, because I use Ableton, whatever the hell it is. I do not like it. I've never liked it. I've never liked it because it has problems, but it's like the emperor's new clothes. No one will admit to the problems. It has a MIDI sync problem that's always been there. You cannot tell me that there's a way to get that audio to sync with your physical devices, and have everything just work. No, you're futzing with like these delay times on the clocks and all this other stuff. And no, I'm not doing it. So when I use Ableton, it's basically a tape deck. I create the sounds using hardware, record them into Ableton, has audio files, and Ableton will never control my MIDI rig, and that's just the way it is. They are two separate worlds. Bitwig is much better on this, and Logic, surprise, surprise, seems to just work. I don't have problems with Logic now that I'm getting into using that again. So, going home again to Logic. The only DAW I've never used, owned, or had the urge to play with, there are two of them. Digital Performer. I've never played Digital Performer. Just never had the need to. And Pro Tools. I've never used Pro Tools. I had a friend that had Pro Tools, and I just listened to them complain about Pro Tools, and so I never bought into Pro Tools. If that's what you have and it makes you happy, go with it. Okay, well, it's getting near 5 o'clock, and I am supposed to provide dinner for some humans. So I want to thank everybody who came and hung out with me today. And we'll see about doing this in the future. I want to get into a rhythm of doing these regularly, as a way of reconnecting to my music and kind of changing, since I've kind of decided to not release music anymore. This is going to be how I justify this massive equipment I have, and just stay connected to being creative and to other creative people, because that's something I want to do. So anyway, thank you all for coming out, and I will see you probably next week. Go find my Discord, join it there. There's only a few people there right now, and it's not very active, but I hope that it will be over time. It's basically just a safe place for geeks to be geeks and argue about filter cutoff slopes and things like that. So take care, everybody.